My older brother spent years sabotaging me. He's banned from my wedding, and I have a restraining order. My parents still blamed me, so I brought receipts. Sup, Reddit. After years of being the scapegoat in my family, I finally drew one hard line before my wedding. My parents didn't take that well, of course. Here's what went down. I'm 27 male, the younger son. My brother Jeff is 3 years older than me. He figured out early that he could get away with pretty much anything if he was smart about it, and Jeff was definitely smart about it. Take the journal incident when I was 11. We were at my cousin Lexi's birthday party, and I'd brought my notebook because I was working on this story about space explorers. Kid stuff, but I was proud of it. Jeff found it in my backpack and decided the whole party needed to hear about Captain Daniel's adventures with his alien girlfriend, Princess Zara. He read the whole thing out loud while everyone laughed. Every embarrassing detail, every misspelled word, every dorky plot twist. I tried to grab it back, but he held it over my head and kept going until I started crying. When my mom found me hiding in the bathroom 20 minutes later, she asked what happened. Jeff's version was that I'd overreacted to some light teasing and made a scene because I was too sensitive. My version? He read my private story to everyone and embarrassed me. Mom's response? Daniel, honey, you need to learn to take a joke. Jeff wasn't being mean. He was just having fun. You can't be so dramatic about everything. That was my first real lesson in family dynamics. In our house, be the bigger person meant be quiet or you're the problem. So I learned to be quiet, but I also learned something else. I started keeping track. Just mental notes. Like how Jeff could leave dishes in the sink for 3 days and mom would eventually wash them herself, but if I left one cereal bowl, I'd get a lecture about responsibility. Or how Jeff's grades were good enough while mine needed to be perfect. By middle school, I'd started writing things down. Not in a journal, I'd learned that lesson, but in a simple notes doc on my phone. Dates, what happened, who said what. I told myself it was just to help me remember if I was going crazy. Looking back, that notes doc probably saved my sanity. The triangulation started early too. Mom would tell me, Jeff's under a lot of pressure at school, so just give him some space when he was being an ass. Then she'd turn around and tell Jeff, Daniel looks up to you so much, maybe you could include him more. I wasn't looking up to him. I was trying to avoid him. But somehow I became the family mediator at 12 years old, always getting pulled into conversations about how to help Jeff or make things easier for everyone. When Jeff threw my PlayStation controller against the wall during one of his temper tantrums, I got told it was partially my fault for not sharing nicely. When I asked why I had to replace it with my allowance money when he broke it, Dad said it would teach me about taking care of my things. The gaslighting was constant. Anytime I pointed out that something wasn't fair, I was being difficult or keeping score or making things about me, Jeff never had to apologize for anything. A week after the PlayStation incident, Mom told my aunt that the boys had a little disagreement over sharing, but they worked it out themselves. No mention of the broken controller, the shouting, or me having to buy a replacement. That became the pattern. Jeff would do something destructive or cruel, I'd get blamed for my reaction to it, and then the whole thing would get reframed as normal sibling rivalry or a mutual misunderstanding. By high school, I'd stopped trying to defend myself. What was the point? The narrative was already written, and I wasn't the author. I just kept taking notes. The parentification started ramping up around this time too. I was the one who had to drive Jeff places at 6 a.m. when he'd missed his ride because he overslept. I was the one fixing the Wi-Fi router the night before his big presentation, because Daniel's good with computers. Somehow being competent at basic life skills meant I was automatically responsible for everyone else's problems. The more capable I became, the more chores got added to my plate. High school was when the financial stuff started getting obvious. Not the big things. Those were easy to miss. It was the small inconsistencies that added up. Like how Jeff needed $300 for a photography course that would really help with college applications. But when I asked for $150 for a computer programming camp, suddenly we needed to think about whether it's really worth the investment. The thing that really opened my eyes was Jeff's car situation. He totaled his first car junior year, ran a red light and T-boned someone because he was texting. Insurance covered most of it, but there was still a $2,500 deductible. 3 days later, Jeff came to me directly with a sob story about needing money to cover the deductible. He texted me asking for $2,000, promising he'd pay me back within 6 months from his part-time job. I'll pay you back, lil' bro. I just need help right now, he wrote. I was 17. What was I going to say? Dad helped facilitate moving the money from my college savings account, but Jeff signed a handwritten IOU for the full amount with a repayment date. I kept a photo of it. He never paid it back. When I brought it up 6 months later, he acted like I was being petty. It's family money, Daniel. We all help each other out. Funny how that help only seemed to flow in one direction. But the college sabotage was what really woke me up to how screwed up this whole thing was. I'd gotten into state with a partial scholarship. Not full ride, but decent enough that I was proud of it. Jeff had applied to the same school, but between his mediocre grades and the year he'd lost repeating sophomore year after failing 2 core classes, he was looking at starting the same year I was, despite being older. No scholarship either, which meant my parents were looking at serious money for both of us. 2 weeks before graduation, I got called into the guidance counselor's office. Mrs. Bennett looked uncomfortable as hell. Daniel, I need to ask you about something. The admissions office at State received an anonymous tip that you may have cheated on your SATs. My stomach dropped. What? They're launching an investigation. It could affect your admission and your scholarship. The next 3 weeks were hell. I had to get letters from teachers vouching for my character. Had to retake a portion of the SAT under supervision. Had to write appeals explaining why I deserved to keep my spot. The whole time, Jeff was weirdly supportive. Kept telling me it would work out. Not to stress about it. Probably just some jealous classmate trying to cause trouble. I kept my mouth shut and jumped through every hoop they put in front of me. The investigation eventually concluded there was no evidence of cheating, and I kept my admission, but the stress nearly killed me, and I spent the summer feeling like I had something to prove. It wasn't until sophomore year of college that I found out who'd made the tip. I was home for Thanksgiving, and Jeff was visibly drunk at dinner, which was apparently fine because he was celebrating getting through midterms. He started laughing about how paranoid I'd been senior year, always worried about my grades and my admission status. Dude, you were so stressed about everything. Remember when you thought someone was trying to sabotage your college stuff? That was hilarious. The way he said it, the timing, the fact that he brought it up at all. I excused myself and went to my room, opened up my laptop and started digging through old emails, looking for anything weird from that time period. Found it in my spam folder. An email from stateadmissions2019@gmail.com sent to one of my professors, claiming to be from the real admissions office and asking about concerns regarding Daniel Smith's academic integrity. The professor had forwarded it to the actual admissions office, which is how the whole investigation started. I ran the email headers through a basic IP lookup tool. The email had been sent from our home network. Jeff was the only other person who knew my professor's email address. I'd mentioned it once when I was excited about getting good feedback on a paper. That night, I updated my notes doc with a new section, Evidence File. Started taking screenshots, saving emails, documenting everything with dates and details. I didn't confront him. What was the point? But I stopped pretending we were just normal siblings with normal problems. I started treating this like what it was, a pattern of deliberate sabotage that I needed to document and protect myself from. The notes doc became my insurance policy. Every weird financial request, every time Jeff borrowed something and didn't return it, every time my parents reframed his behavior to make me look like the problem, it all went in the file. By graduation, I had 3 years of documented incidents with dates, amounts, and screenshots where applicable. I wasn't paranoid, I was prepared. I started getting systematic about file naming too. Every piece of evidence got tagged with timestamps and provenance notes. If this ever went legal, I wanted documentation that would hold up in court. College was the first time I'd ever lived somewhere that Jeff couldn't just show up and create chaos. 4 hours away felt like 4,000 miles, and for the first time in my life, I could breathe. I went low contact immediately. Didn't make a big announcement about it, just stopped reaching out and kept my responses short when they contacted me. Holidays only. And even then I'd drive back the day of and leave the day after. My parents noticed, obviously. Started with the concerned calls about how college was going. Was I making friends? Was I struggling with the independence? When I kept insisting everything was fine, they switched tactics. Jeff misses you, Mom would say. He was asking when you're coming home next. Right. The same Jeff who'd spent the last decade making my life miserable. Every holiday, Mom would post these carefully crafted Facebook updates about how wonderful it was to have both my boys home and how proud she was of Jeff's leadership in his internship and Daniel's academic progress. Never mind that Jeff had dropped out of his internship after 2 weeks because he didn't like the work environment. Never mind that he was on academic probation for failing 3 classes. The public story was always about what a great, tight-knit family we were. The pressure ramped up junior year when I started dating Maria. Suddenly, every conversation included hints about bringing her home for holidays, how much they wanted to meet her, How Jeff was so excited to have a potential sister-in-law. I made excuses for 2 years. She was busy with her own family. She had work commitments. She was shy about meeting new people. The truth was simpler. I didn't trust my family anywhere near someone I actually cared about. That changed the summer before senior year, when my cousin Lexi called me out of nowhere. Hey, this is going to sound weird, but I was talking to my therapist about family stuff, and she asked me to think about specific incidents that felt wrong when I was a kid. Do you remember that time at my 8th birthday party when you fell down the stairs? I remembered that party, but not the stairs part. What are you talking about? Jeff said you fell and hit your head, but I was right there, Daniel. He pushed you. Like, deliberately pushed you because you were in his way when he was trying to get to the bathroom. You tumbled down like 6 stairs and got a huge bump on your forehead. The memory came flooding back. Not the fall itself, but the aftermath. Jeff telling everyone I'd tripped because I was clumsy and not watching where I was going. My parents being more worried about whether I'd embarrassed the family by crying than whether I was actually hurt. Why didn't you say anything? I asked Lexi. I was 8, and when I tried to tell your mom what I saw, she said I must have been confused because Jeff wouldn't do something like that on purpose. Another data point. Another piece of evidence that the pattern went back further than I'd realized. That's when I decided it was time for Maria to meet my family. Not because I wanted to integrate her into their dysfunction, but because I needed a neutral observer. Someone who could see what I was seeing and confirm I wasn't losing my mind. The visit went exactly as badly as I expected. Jeff was charming for about 30 minutes, then started making these little digs about my major, my career prospects, my general life choices. All delivered with a smile and framed as brotherly concern. Maria picked up on it immediately. On the drive back to school, she was quiet for about an hour before finally speaking up. Your brother's a piece of work. Yeah? He spent the entire weekend trying to undermine you. And your parents just let him. They acted like his comments were normal or even helpful. That night, she asked me directly, "What are you going to do about this?" Good question. I'd been documenting and avoiding for years, but I'd never actually considered what the endgame looked like. I don't know, I told her, but I'm not letting them screw up my life anymore. 6 months later, I proposed. Maria said yes, and for the first time in my adult life, I had to think seriously about what kind of family I wanted to build and who I wanted to be part of it. The answer was becoming pretty clear. A few weeks later, I saw Mom's Christmas Facebook post about our wonderful family holiday traditions, next to a photo of me looking visibly uncomfortable while Jeff dominated the conversation. The caption talked about gratitude for family bonds and the joy of having both sons home. Meanwhile, the reality was Jeff spending 2 hours bragging about his latest get-rich-quick scheme while I counted down the minutes until I could leave. Maria looked at the post and just said, "She's not describing the same visit we were at. That's not neutral family documentation. That's active propaganda. Planning a wedding when half your family is toxic is like trying to plan a nice dinner when half the guests have food poisoning. Technically possible, but everyone's going to have a bad time." Maria and I decided early on that we wanted something small, intimate. People who actually supported our relationship and weren't going to create drama or make the day about themselves. When I told my parents about our engagement, the first question wasn't congratulations or when's the date. It was, how many people are you inviting and what's the budget looking like? Translation, how much of this are we going to have to pay for? And how much say do we get in the guest list? I shut that down immediately. We're paying for it ourselves, and we're keeping it small. Probably 60 people max. Mom's face went through about 5 different expressions before landing on concerned disappointment. 60 people? Daniel, that's barely family. What about your cousins? What about our friends who've known you since you were little? It's our wedding, Mom. We want people there who actually know us as adults and support our relationship. Dad jumped in with the financial angle. Son, if money's tight, we could help out. Make it easier to include everyone. Right, include everyone, which meant including Jeff, which meant giving him a stage to perform on and an audience to manipulate. Thanks, but we've got it handled. That's when they started the pressure campaign. Phone calls about how hurt various relatives were going to be. Texts about family unity and keeping everyone together. Passive-aggressive comments about how some people outgrow their families when they get a little success. The breaking point came 3 months before the wedding, when Jeff sent an email to our entire extended family. Subject line, concerned about Daniel's wedding plans. He CC'd me on it, which was either monumentally stupid or deliberately provocative. Probably both. The email was a masterpiece of manipulation. He painted himself as the concerned older brother who just wanted to make sure family relationships weren't being damaged by miscommunication. Vitas. He brought up how I'd always been sensitive, and how college had changed me, and how he was worried I was making decisions based on unresolved childhood issues, rather than what was best for the family. Then he got specific. Claimed I was punishing our parents for normal parenting decisions. Said I was rewriting history to make myself look like a victim. Suggested that Maria was encouraging unhealthy boundaries and driving a wedge between me and my family. The email ended with a plea for everyone to reach out to me and help me see the reason before I did something I'd regret. I read it, then opened up my evidence file. Time to go nuclear. I spent the next 2 hours putting together what I called my truth packet, a 2-page timeline with dates, amounts, and brief descriptions of incidents going back 15 years. Each item was labeled as an exhibit with a short caption. Exhibit A, photo of handwritten IOU from Jeff, March 15, 2018. Loan for car deductible, $2,000. Will pay back within 6 months. Jeff. Note. Never repaid despite multiple requests. Exhibit B, email thread from stateadmissions2019@gmail.com, sent from home IP address May 12, 2019. Subject, concerns regarding Daniel Smith's academic integrity. Exhibit C, bank statement showing withdrawal from Daniel's college savings, March 18, 2018. Authorization, Dad. Memo, loan to Jeff, car deductible, and so on. 15 items total, each one documented with screenshots, dates, and minimal commentary. I sent it as a reply all to Jeff's email. Subject line, concerned about Daniel's wedding plans, documentation attached. My message was 3 sentences. Jeff asked family members to reach out about my wedding decisions. Before you do, please review the attached documentation of his behavior over the past 15 years. Make your own conclusions. I sent everything via certified mail to the core family members, keeping the green delivery confirmation cards in a file folder. The responses came back fast. Most people didn't reply at all, but Aunt Isabel sent a neutral acknowledgement that she'd received the materials and would review them. Lexi called the same day to say she was proud of me for finally laying everything out in black and white. The response was immediate and exactly what I expected. Mom called within 10 minutes, sobbing about how I was destroying the family and airing private business and humiliating everyone. Dad's approach was more practical. Daniel, this makes everyone look bad. Can't we handle this privately? Jeff himself didn't respond directly, but he called Lexi and a few other cousins trying to do damage control. Claimed the documents were taken out of context and that I was having some kind of breakdown, but other people started reaching out too. Lexi called to say she was proud of me for finally speaking up. My Aunt Laura, Mom's sister, sent a private message saying she'd always suspected something was off, but didn't want to interfere. The most vindicating response came from Tyler, a guy from Jeff's high school class who'd been in a group chat with him senior year. He sent me screenshots of messages from 2019, right around the time of my SAT investigation. The messages were brutal. Jeff bragging about shaking up my college plans, laughing about how I was freaking out over the investigation, calling me paranoid and dramatic for being stressed about potentially losing my scholarship. Got him grounded again, LOL, from 3 years earlier. Mom totally bought it from 2 years before that. A clear pattern of someone who enjoyed causing problems and getting away with it. I forwarded the screenshots to everyone who'd received Jeff's original email. Subject line, additional documentation. The family civil war was officially underway. 3 weeks later, I sent a follow-up email to my parents and Jeff. The message was short. After considering the family dynamics of the past 27 years, I've decided that Jeff will not be invited to my wedding. If you choose to campaign for his inclusion or create drama around this decision, your invitations will also be revoked. This is not a negotiation. Mom's response was to forward my email to Jeff with the subject line, "Please call me," which I only knew about because she accidentally included me in the forward. That's when I started looking into attorneys. Finding a lawyer who specializes in family harassment cases is harder than you'd think. Most attorneys want to handle divorce or custody disputes. Not, my brother's been sabotaging me for 15 years, and my parents enable it. I finally found someone through Maria's cousin, who dealt with a stalking situation. Michael, family law with a focus on harassment and restraining orders. When I showed him my documentation, he didn't look at me like I was crazy. "This is good work," he said, flipping through the timeline. "Most people don't keep records like this. Makes my job a lot easier." The first step was cease and desist letters. One to Jeff, one to my parents. Formal legal language demanding they stop contacting me, my fiancé, my employer, and anyone connected to our wedding. The letters referenced specific incidents from my documentation and made it clear that further contact would result in legal action. Jeff's letter included an additional demand, a formal retraction of his concerned about Daniel's wedding plans email, to be sent to the same distribution list as the original. He had 10 days to comply. My parents' letter was shorter, but included a specific provision about the wedding. They were welcome to attend if they could commit to not discussing Jeff, not campaigning for his inclusion, and not creating any disruptions. If they couldn't make that commitment, they needed to decline the invitation within 7 days. The letters went out via certified mail on a Wednesday. Jeff signed for his on Thursday. My parents got theirs on Friday. Jeff's response came through his lawyer. Apparently, he'd lawyered up too. His attorney sent a sternly worded letter claiming my documentation was defamatory and threatening a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Michael laughed when he read it. Textbook intimidation tactic. He's got nothing. My parents didn't respond to the letter at all, but Mom called Maria's parents directly, tried to get them to intervene and talk sense into us before we destroyed the family permanently. Maria's mom shut that down fast. I'm sorry you're going through this, but it's not our place to get involved in your family issues. When the 10-day deadline passed without a retraction from Jeff, Michael filed the next round of paperwork. Small claims court, $2,847 for the loan that was never repaid, plus interest and court costs. I had the photo of his handwritten IOU, the bank records showing the loan disbursement, and Jeff's text messages acknowledging the debt but claiming it was family business that didn't need to be formalized. Michael helped me put together a packet showing the fake admissions email, the IP trace to our home network, and the timeline proving only Jeff had access to my professor's contact information. The detective who took the report was straightforward about expectations. This is from 2019, so prosecution isn't likely at this point, she said. But it's good documentation for your harassment case. No trespass notices went out next. Certified mail to both Jeff and my parents, formally notifying them they were not welcome at my home, workplace, or wedding venue. Any appearance at these locations would be considered criminal trespass. The venue got copies of the letters along with photos of all 3 family members. I paid extra for security coverage on the wedding day. 2 off-duty cops who knew exactly what they were looking for. Jeff tried one more manipulation tactic. He sent a Facebook message to Maria claiming he was worried about my mental health and that I was isolating myself from people who love me. He suggested she stage an intervention to get me professional help. Maria screenshot the message and forwarded it to Michael. Unwanted contact after receiving the cease and desist letter, documented and time-stamped. Michael filed the next round of paperwork. Jeff never showed up to small claims court, so we got a default judgment for the full amount plus court costs. 6 weeks later, the writ of garnishment hit his paycheck. His employer's HR department was surprisingly efficient about processing the legal paperwork. The first deduction was $186, straight out of his direct deposit. About 6 weeks later, Jeff's wages got garnished for the small claims judgment. Turns out he worked at his buddy's marketing company, and their payroll company was very efficient about processing legal paperwork. The garnishment was only $200 a month, not enough to hurt him financially, but enough to remind him every single payday that actions have consequences. My parents made one last attempt at reconciliation, showing up at my apartment with a gift bag and a speech about family forgiveness. I didn't open the door, just called through it. You received the no trespass notice. You need to leave now or I'm calling the police. They left, but not before Mom loudly told the neighbors she was just trying to see her son and didn't understand why I was being so cruel. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. Michael had warned me that getting one approved wasn't automatic. You need to show a pattern of behavior that makes you fear for your safety. We had plenty. The spoofing incident, the documented unwanted contact after the cease and desist letters, the contact through third parties, the trespassing at my home. The judge reviewed the evidence file and granted a temporary restraining order with a hearing scheduled for 2 weeks later. The final restraining order hearing was almost anticlimactic. Jeff didn't show up. My parents came with their own lawyer, who basically argued that they were just concerned about their son's well-being and didn't understand why normal family contact was being criminalized. The judge wasn't buying it. The respondents received multiple requests to cease contact through appropriate legal channels. They chose to ignore those requests. The petitioner has documented a clear pattern of harassment that justifies protection under the law. Final restraining order granted. 3 years, renewable if necessary. The restraining order paperwork was a thing of beauty. Michael walked me through the whole checklist: service requirements, violation protocols, enforcement procedures. I got a stamped copy for my records and a PDF version for my phone, so I'd always have proof of the protection if I needed it. That binder of legal documents effectively shut the door on 15 years of family dysfunction. That night, Maria and I went out for dinner to celebrate. Not because I enjoyed putting my family through legal proceedings, but because for the first time in my adult life, I had institutional protection from their dysfunction. The wedding was 3 weeks away, and finally, I could focus on marrying the woman I loved instead of managing the people who'd spent decades trying to undermine me. The morning of the wedding, I woke up calmer than I'd felt in months. No anxiety about potential drama. No contingency planning for family disasters. Just excitement about starting our life together. The venue coordinator called while I was getting ready. Just wanted to confirm, your security team is briefed on the guest list restrictions, and we have photos of the individuals who aren't permitted on the property. Everything's locked down tight. Perfect. The security protocol was straightforward but thorough. Pre-cleared guest list with photo IDs required for entry. Radio communication between the 2 off-duty officers and the venue staff. Written incident reports for any attempted unauthorized access. Everything was handled. The wedding was exactly what Maria and I wanted. Small and intimate. 58 people ended up attending. Maria's family, my extended family, the ones who'd sided with reality over reputation, close friends from college and work, and a few family friends who'd known us long enough to understand the situation. During the reception, my cousin Lexi pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I know this wasn't easy, but you should see how relaxed you look. I haven't seen you this happy at a family event since we were kids." She was right. I wasn't scanning the room for potential problems. I was just enjoying my wedding. About 2 hours into the reception, I noticed one of the security guys walking toward me. For a second, my stomach dropped. Had they actually shown up? "Just wanted to give you a heads up," he said quietly. "2 people matching your parents' photos approached the entrance about 20 minutes ago. They had a gift bag and said they were here for the wedding. We explained they weren't on the list and asked them to leave. They complied without incident. I thanked him and went back to the party. Didn't even mention it to Maria until later that night. What was the point? They'd been handled professionally, and our day had proceeded exactly as planned. Maria's dad gave a great speech about love and partnership. My Aunt Laura spoke about resilience and choosing your own path. Nobody felt obligated to mention absent family, or healing old wounds, or any of that performative reconciliation nonsense. Just joy. Near the end of the night, while we were saying goodbye to guests, Maria's mom hugged me and whispered, "I'm glad you found us. Family isn't just about blood." That hit harder than any of the legal victories. For the first time in my life, I was part of a family that actually functioned like a family. The next week, Maria and I started the name change process. I'd been thinking about it since the engagement, but the wedding solidified my decision. I wanted to take her name, not just as a romantic gesture, but as a clean break from the legacy I'd inherited. The paperwork was straightforward. Marriage certificate to the Social Security office, then updated driver's license, passport, bank accounts, work records. Each change felt like removing another anchor that had been weighing me down. 3 months later, we bought a house. Small but perfect, with a good security system and neighbors who actually knew us as Daniel and Maria Forbes, not as the son who'd caused all that family drama. Jeff tried to find us through social media, but we'd already locked everything down. New addresses, updated emergency contacts, password protection on all our accounts. He could post whatever he wanted about me online. I'd never see it, and it couldn't reach us. The restraining order was still in effect, and Michael had advised us to document any attempts at contact, even indirect ones. But honestly, the silence was better than any legal remedy. We were building something new, something that belonged entirely to us. A year and a half after the wedding, Maria and I found out we were expecting our first kid. The news hit different than I expected. Not just excitement, but this fierce protective instinct that clarified every decision we'd made about family boundaries. This kid was going to grow up in a house where love didn't come with conditions and punishment disguised as concern. So we updated our security immediately. Ring doorbell plus exterior cameras with person and motion detection, and a driveway camera that could capture license plates. Detailed emergency contact lists for the pediatrician, daycare, and schools that specifically excluded my birth family. Password protection on all medical and educational records. Maria initially thought I was being paranoid, but I showed her some research about grandparents' rights laws and how family courts sometimes prioritize family reunification over documented history of harmful behavior. "I'm not taking any chances," I told her. "This kid gets to grow up safe, even if that means being extra cautious." She understood. Her family had been functional enough that the idea of relatives being dangerous felt abstract, but she trusted my judgment and supported the precautions. Jeff's social media presence had become increasingly bitter over the past year. Not about me specifically. He was smart enough to avoid anything that could be construed as harassment, but lots of posts about family loyalty and people who abandon their blood and the importance of forgiveness. The irony was delicious, but I didn't engage. Blocked his accounts, blocked his friends, let him perform his victim narrative for whoever wanted to believe it. My parents had gone completely silent after the restraining order. No attempts at contact, no messages through intermediaries, no showing up at public events where they might run into us. Either they'd finally accepted the boundaries, or they'd decided I was permanently lost to them. Either way, fine with me. I'd spent months updating our estate planning documents to reflect the new reality. Revocable trust with Maria as primary beneficiary, power of attorney forms, healthcare proxy designations, HIPAA authorizations for medical decisions. Every document included a specific exclusion clause preventing my birth parents or Jeff from making any decisions for our son if something happened to us. The lawyer called it an anti-inheritance provision and said it was legally bulletproof. The extended family had mostly settled into a new normal. Lexi and I stayed close. Aunt Laura sent birthday cards and called occasionally. A few cousins had reached out to say they understood why I'd made the choices I did. The relatives who'd sided with my parents simply faded out. Holiday cards stopped coming. Wedding invitations didn't arrive. I got removed from family group texts and Facebook events. Fine by me. I didn't care. When our son was born, Maria and I were very selective about announcements. Close friends, supportive family members, people who'd shown up for us consistently. We posted one photo on social media, then went quiet. The baby was perfect. To him, his family was just mom, dad, and the handful of adults who loved him unconditionally. 6 months later, I got a text from an unknown number. Just a photo of our son, clearly taken from my social media, with the message, "Beautiful grandson. Hope we can meet him someday." I screenshot it, forwarded it to Michael, and blocked the number. Violation of the restraining order, documented and reported. The next day, I changed all our social media to private and removed any photos that showed identifiable details about where we lived or worked. That night, Maria asked if I ever regretted how things ended up. "Do you miss having a normal family?" she said. "Like, one where your kids would have grandparents and uncles and all that traditional stuff?" I thought about it seriously. "No," I said finally. "I miss the idea of having a normal family. But we never actually had that." I looked at our son sleeping in his crib. "He's going to have something better, I promise." Maria smiled. "Sounds pretty good to me." 2 weeks later, we got a letter from Michael. The police had arrested Jeff for violating the restraining order. Apparently, he'd driven by our house multiple times and been caught on our neighbor's security camera. The texts about our son had been traced back to a phone registered in his name. He pled no contest and got 6 months supervised probation plus an extension of the restraining order for another 3 years. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no anger. Just a mild sense of validation that everything I'd done was worth it. Last month, I updated my will and estate planning documents. Maria and I both have detailed instructions about who can make decisions for our son if something happens to us. Jeff and my parents are specifically excluded. Boundaries weren't revenge. They were the fire exit.